Yes, you can move that, the basket. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأزواجه وذريته وأصحابه ومن والاه وبعد فالحمد لله ثم الحمد لله تقبل الله منا ومنكم. Allah Ta'ala accept our prayers. It's always really surreal when we hear Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. When we hear this recited in the prayer, usually it's Ramadan. We don't hear it too much outside of Ramadan. And not only is it in Ramadan, it's usually marking the first night of Taraweeh. And then the excitement really kicks in about, may Allah give us the tawfiq and the facilitation to listen to His book from beginning to end. And then it's recited again at the very end, because the Quran never ends. So once the completion is made, then we start from Alif Lam Mim once again. And we know that these are the huruf al-muqatta'at, the disjointed letters. And I speak of these frequently, how it's only Allah who knows their meaning. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly knows their meaning. That disclaimer is always given by the mufassirun, by the commentators of the Quran. But then they do proceed to give potential meanings of what, potential insights of what they can mean. And one of them is that when you look at one insight that was given is when you look at the makharij of Alif, Lam, and Mim. Alif is from the huruf al-halqiyya, from the throat letters. Lam, you use your tongue and the roof of your mouth, the palate. And then Mim is from the letters of the lips. So you use your entire respiratory, the part of your body which you use to breathe, to remind us that every breath that we have, it should surround the Quran. And every breath that we take, it should be something which we are living by the Quran. It's through our breath that we live, and these are the letters that Allah Ta'ala opens His book with. Another insight that was given is Alif, Lam, and Mim. Alif is for Allah, Lam is for Jibril, and Mim is for Sayyidina Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because this is going to be the tartib and the method through which the revelation will come. So someone might wonder, Alif for Allah, Lam for Jibril. So Jibril, the Lam is one of the root letters, and because Arabic is a root-based language, when you have abbreviations, you could use any of the root letters. It's not like in English where you have to use the first letter. When you have an abbreviation, you have to use the first letter of a word, but you can also use any of the root letters for an abbreviation. So the Lam, being a root letter in Jibril, can be used for Jibril, and then Mim being for Sayyidina Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as revelation came from Allah to Jibril Alayhi Salam and to Sayyidina Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Another meaning that was given is that this Alif Lam Mim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before now commencing with the mentioning of the book and the recitation of the book, He's showing the Arabs and He's showing humankind that I'm going to use the same letters, Alif Lam Mim, no tricks. And then look at what I can produce with these letters. With these same letters that you've been using, and these same letters that you use to speak and to make your poetry and to make all of your speech, look at what I will produce with these same letters, and then recognize that this is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not the speech of a human being. And this is the i'jaz of the Quran, and it's the greatest miracle in our deen is the speech of Allah that was revealed. But ultimately, again, it comes down to the fact that Allah is showing us that even the basic things we have no knowledge of. We think we know meanings of words. We think we know meanings of expressions. We think we get so sophisticated and we come up with all this talk and all these theories and ideas. Yet we don't even know what the letters of the words that we say mean. You have fancy words. You impress people with huge vocabulary. You don't even know the meanings of the letters. Allah even knows the meaning of letters, meaning Allah's knowledge is completely comprehensive. And He knows everything, not just the meanings of words and statements, but even the meanings of the letters in each of those words, which we don't know. To us, they're just sounds. And when we also look at the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, after Alif Lam Mim, Then Allah Azza wa Jal mentions ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ, that this is the book in which there is no doubt. هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, and it's the guidance for the people who have taqwa, the people who are conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the answer to the dua that's recited in Fatiha. So again, we're reminded when we start this now recitation of the book, when we recite Fatiha, there's a dua in there, Ihdina Sirat Mustaqim, to guide us to the straight path, give us guidance. And then right after we make this dua in Fatiha, Allah answers it immediately and tells you this is the book, what is the guidance. That if you want that guidance, the guidance that you're seeking, it's going to be in this book. So then also when the Quran is just described later, also we read the verses in the second juz. For those who were able to keep track, mashallah, we were able to complete the first juz and a half. We recited one juz and a half today. And we typically will recite more in the first few nights so that we can make sure we complete in the last 10 nights, not just like on the 30th day. Because if you did one juz a day, you wouldn't finish until the 30th night. And number one, you might not have 30 nights. And number two, people like to finish on the 27th, sometimes on the 25th, in which case you have to recite a little bit more. So 1.5 juz were recited, alhamdulillah, by Allah's grace tonight. And in the second juz, the verses of Ramadan, right? So the one place where Ramadan is mentioned in the entire Quran, Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran, Allah Ta'ala mentions the Quran about this month of Ramadan. It's the month of Ramadan in which the Quran is revealed. So when we do these like word associations and you ask people what's the first thing that comes into your mind when you say Ramadan, the first thing that should come to our mind is actually the Quran, not fasting, not being hungry, not any of these things. Rather, what should come to our mind is the Quran. Because the one place where Allah mentions the month of Ramadan in the Quran, He uses the Quran to describe what this month is about and what makes it special. And then once again, when Allah describes what is the Quran, الذي هدى للناس, it's a guidance for humankind. وبينات من الهدى, and then He repeats it again, and it's a clarification of guidance. So it's not just like a general guidance; it's every detail of guidance that we would need. It's here. It's a clarification of what the guidance is, wal furqan, and it's also what's the meaning of furqan? Oh, mashallah. Hafiz Furqan told us the meaning. It's the differentiator, it's the distinguisher between what is haq and batil, the thing which will help distinguish what is right from what is wrong. This is what the Quran is. It's that guidance that we seek. And if we live by this book, then that guidance will come into our life. When you look at these verses also of the Quran, of the month of Ramadan, it talks about the Quran. And then, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. So then whoever witnesses the month, let them fast. And then fasting. Fasting is something secondary. As I mentioned before we prayed Salatul Isha, the fasting is now to commemorate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy on us that He gave us His book. We're not doing Allah a favor by fasting. We're doing ourselves a favor. This is a duty on us that we owe to express our gratitude to Allah that we have this. Where would we be if we did not have the deen? What kind of perhaps darkness might we find ourselves in, and confusion might we be in when we get through difficulties and hardship comes into our life? I think one of the biggest calamities that a person has when they don't have Allah is that when hardships come in their life, they don't know what to do and they don't know how to approach it. All you have to do is just maybe try to get over it. Like people say, just get over it. That's all you can really do. But how do you actually get over it? And there are levels of what we go through in life as human beings. And sometimes we go through some extreme grief and extreme hardship and loss. And it's easy to just say, get over it when you're not going through it. But when people are going through things that we could never imagine, how can you just say, get over it? But to know that we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is something which we have to be grateful for. And this is why we then do our deeds. We have to commemorate the fact that we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our life. So when we hear about the hardship that takes place in the world and the hardship that our brothers and sisters have to go through, then we do have some solace in knowing that it's never in vain and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. So we fast. That's a secondary thing that comes to mind when we think about this month. And it's because of our gratitude that we have the Quran and we have this guidance and we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our life. So then whoever witnesses then this the month, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ, again, this is where you get the word of witnessing, and seeing the month here. How do you see a month? Meaning by you see the moon. And that's why the witnessing and the moon sighting is something which is a sunnah of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and it's a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that whoever witnesses the month. And I always mention also how the word month actually comes from the word moon, because it takes a month for a moon cycle to go from beginning to end. And then after the month of fasting, the month of Ramadan, the verse which talks about the month of Ramadan and fasting, what's the next verse? It's about dua. إِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. After talking about Ramadan and the Quran and fasting, then Allah Ta'ala talks about dua. This should be a month in which we increase our dua, and we ask Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala from the bottom of our hearts for everything that it is that we might need, all those things which have been troubling us, all those worries that we have, all of our loved ones, all of our friends and family, all of our brothers and sisters, to really plead from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, because this is the month of Allah's mercy, and this is the month of Allah Ta'ala's help. We really have to increase our dua and become people of dua, people who are connected to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And the Prophet ﷺ, in a famous hadith, he also tells us that in this month we should increase 4 things: 2 things which make Allah very happy, and 2 things which we need for ourselves. The 2 things which make Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala very happy is to increase saying La ilaha illallah and astaghfirullah, that we recite La ilaha illallah in abundance and frequently, and then we say astaghfirullah and we seek Allah's forgiveness frequently. This makes Allah very happy. And then 2 things that we need for ourselves is that you ask for Jannah and you ask for protection from the fire. So again, this is dua. This is dua. When we think about what it is that we should be making dua for, ultimately it's the hereafter. We can't be people who become so enamored with this world, and we think about all the hardships in this world, that we want Allah to remove the hardship in this world. Of course we want the hardship of this world to be removed, but more than that, we want the hardship of the hereafter to be removed, and we want to be able to have bliss in the hereafter. And the only way you can truly want that is if you truly believe in it and you have conviction in it. And then when that conviction really comes, then we actually seek it. It minimizes what we experience in the world. So the pain and grief that we have in this world, it actually becomes lessened when we think about the hereafter more. So when it comes to making dua more and becoming people of dua, not just for the things of this world. Yes, we want our kids to be, mashallah, safe, and we want them to get good educations, and we want them to find pious spouses, and we want our, mashallah, brothers and sisters to have afiyah and to have their tyranny removed. But ultimately, we want Jannah. We want paradise, because paradise is a reflection of Allah's pleasure. And we want protection from the fire, because the fire is a representation of Allah's wrath. And we don't want to displease our Lord. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to be people of the Quran, to be people who are committed to worshiping Allah through our fasting, to be people who make dua and call upon Him throughout the day and throughout the night, and be people who are guided in every walk of our life. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to witness this month of Ramadan with faith and with hope, and to be a source of mercy, forgiveness, and salvation for all of us. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakumullah khairan. Salatul Witr, inshallah.